Welcome back to the Daily Living Jewish Kids Shulchan Aruch class. We have begun to learn section 58, which includes the laws of making a bracha over smell. And we began yesterday by saying, just as a person should not eat or drink without making a bracha, just as a person may not eat or drink without making a bracha, so may a person not smell and benefit from smell without making a bracha. So it's not speaking about that you try to smell if something is off or not, or if you try to smell to see whether you have COVID. You're talking about to smell in order to enjoy the aroma. A bracha needs to be made. So far we discussed, I think, 3 brachas. We said that if you smell a fruit that has a good smell, that there's a special bracha for that. If you smell a bark of a tree that has a good smell, then you would say, the creator of fragrant trees. And if you smell something, grass or herbs, then you would say, who creates fragrant grasses. And at the end of yesterday's class, we discussed that there's a question whether what bracha needs to be made if you're going to smell pepper or spices. What's the question? Yesterday I said we'll have to get back to you with the details. So here are the details. The question is, are spices considered a food or not? If they're considered a food, then you would need to say the bracha Asher Nasan Reach Tov Bapeiros. If they're not considered a food, then you would need to say Bayrei Atzei B'Savim. So since we're not sure what bracha to make, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says don't smell them, because you're not sure what bracha to make it. You don't want to do it without a benefit, without a bracha. In the Shulchan Aruch Halav, in the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, one of the other halachic authorities, he actually says you can smell them if you want to smell spices to enjoy the smell. And the bracha you would make would be Bayrei Midei B'Samim, like we do by Havdalah. Okay. Where are we up to? Okay, halacha number 4. So grasses, herbs, you would say Bayrei Isvei B'Samim, as we said, he was created fragrant herbs. And we did look at this as well. And we said the difference between a tree and a herb is if it's hard or soft. If it's hard, like a rose bush that grows from year to year, then it would be Bayrei Atzei B'Samim, who creates fragrant wood or trees. And if it's soft, then you would say who creates fragrant grasses. Now, if it's neither a tree or a herb, but rather like musk, which comes from an animal, then you would say the bracha Bayrei Midei V'Samim, who creates different types of smells, because it's not a wood, it's not a fruit, it's not a grass. So we just say, blessed are you Hashem, our King of the world, who creates Midei V'Samim, different types of samim. If you have a Havdalah kit, so very often what you smell for Havdalah is a combination of a few different types of fragrances. So since it's a combination of different fragrances, so the smell is coming from different things. So you say Bayrei Midei V'Samim, creator of different types of spices, because it's a whole lot together. So you're just going to make one bracha. Okay, likewise, when you smell dried mushrooms, remember we said mushrooms are not considered a fruit or vegetable because they actually just grow off the moisture. They can grow out of metal. So if the dried mushrooms have a good smell, you would say Bayrei Midei V'Samim. So we've covered 4 brachas so far. A bracha on fruits that have a good smell, on trees that have a good smell, on grasses that have a good smell, and now on anything else that has a good smell. It's worth also pointing out, just to clarify yesterday, that some authorities say that the bracha that one makes for smelling a fruit is only if that fruit is planted both for eating and for the smell. But if it's only planted for eating and you decide to enjoy the smell, there's actually a question whether or not you can make the bracha for fruits. So some people say to actually refrain from smelling fruits unless they are a fruit that is actually harvested both for eating and for smelling. So yeah, so practically speaking, we're not quick to make we don't want to say Hashem's name in vain, and so one should rather err on the side of caution, and not make a bracha or not smell something if you're not sure whether it does or doesn't deserve a bracha. Here's another interesting one. There's a special oil called balsam oil, which grows in the land of Israel, and it's special for Israel. And the rabbis made a special bracha for it, which is called Boire Shemen Arev, who creates pleasant oil or sweet oil. So that's a special one. Okay, now, 2 days ago we spoke about mistakes. So let's see again if you got it mixed up. If on a tree you said you creates isfei b'samim, which is grasses, so you were making a bracha on the bark of a tree, but the bracha that you made was for grass, or the reverse, and you were making a bracha on a grass, but you said b'arei atzei b'samim, then you have not fulfilled your obligation. But if you said b'arei minei b'samim, Hashem has created different types of spices, so that would work for any spices. Because you're just saying different types of spices, you're not specifying it each one. This is kind of like when we spoke about food. We said if somebody said the bracha of shehakol diyabit farai, that always works. So the equivalent of that in brachas is if somebody says the bracha midei v'samim, it always works. So if you're in doubt regarding any spices as to what bracha to make, then you would say midei v'samim. He says, it seems to me that if you said barei atzei v'samim, on smelling the fruit of a tree, you've fulfilled your duty. So although you should have said a special bracha for fruit, but since you mentioned tree and the fruit is associated to the tree, it seems that you will have fulfilled your mitzvah. Therefore, it seems to me that on smelling cloves, orange peel, and lemon peel, you should actually rather say barei atzei b'samim, because we're not sure whether they're considered food or not, because you don't usually eat the peels. You usually eat what's in the peels. So if you want to smell the peels, we're not sure, is it considered like the bark of a tree or is it considered like a fruit? So if you want to err on the side of caution, rather say on the tree, because that includes the fruit, as opposed to if you're going to say on the fruit, it may not be considered a fruit since it's not something that is consumed. Okay, now we get into a greater discussion, which is the smell that is extracted or transferred from one item to another. Okay, so water that was scented. And this will lead us to a lot of modern day things. Is a bracha made on perfumes, deodorants? We'll talk about all of that. The bottom line is usually not, but stay tuned, please guys, tomorrow as we continue the laws of good smells. Thank you so much for joining.